Song lyrics to poetry. That's something which dates back to the oldest human historical traditions, the oral tradition. We fantasy authors speak of heroic deeds recorded in ballads, of bards whose reiteration of those tales inspire warriors to perform better in battle. In reality, epic poetry like the Aeneid could be just as much byproducts of political expediency, especially in the latter's case, helping to convey a message of where in history certain people belong and what legacies they are meant to uphold in their daily lives. Music has also been used to worship perceived higher powers. The theme for Dystopian Review is Dies Irae, a Gregorian chant from the 1200s, and it's about the Day of Judgment when God sorts those who are worthy of salvation from those who are not. Dies Irae, dies ia, solvet saeculum in favilla, teste David cum Sibylla. Or in English, Day of wrath and doom impending, David's word with Sibyl's blending, heaven and earth in ashes ending. But music is as much a vehicle for social critique as it is for historical or religious purposes. Think back to the 1970s when so much of a generation's music was about criticizing the man and protesting an unjust war or against unfair systems that oppress some or even all of its people, all while getting savaged by the authorities. Sounds like we haven't necessarily gone very far, and in fact still have much further to go. If you want an example of a politically charged song that's worth listening to about our modern condition from 2024, try Joe Mann's Drunken 1999. It's fantastically layered. But today we're going back to 2008, to a place in Massachusetts I've been to a couple of times in my life with definitely intense memories. To a group of people, some of whom I've met maybe once or twice, and one of whom is still a good friend of mine. We're going to a place known as the Pandora's Toybox theme park, to listen to the title track off Pandora Toybox's debut album, Evil and Other Pastimes. This is Dystopian Review, the place where we once dreamed of nightmare worlds, but now, sadly, find ourselves in one. Pandora's Toybox was a gothic horror-themed band based out of Holyoke, Massachusetts. I wasn't ever very close to most of the people in the band, so I'm just giving you my interpretation of their music and not giving you some kind of behind-the-scenes, pseudo-authorized version of it. It's also worth noting that their music is indeed quite explicit, and that this video will include trigger warnings for a lot of bad things, including but not limited to abortion, murder, societal collapse, toxic chemicals, slavery, terrorist attacks, and more. I'll just leave it at that. It's got a lot of tough stuff in it. Calling themselves Cynical Circus Rock, the album tells the story of the resurrection of one Morte McGadiver, the ringleader of a nefarious circus of undead misfits and performers. These include Morgan, the operatic backing vocalist for Morte's band, the Grim Pills, as well as the rest of the band, who I confess to not really knowing much about as they're not mentioned as often in the lore. On the other hand, there's a secondary character in the storyline named Deirdre Stroyer. Deirdre is more or less a nightly news broadcaster who lies to the public daily about the worsening state of society to, quote, keep your head in the news so you're frustrated by the bad things happening and thus too frustrated to be able to act. Gee, do you think maybe this album inspired me to do Dystopian Report just a little bit? I do. And as a side note, my Latin skills are non-existent, so forgive me if I butchered those lyrics earlier, but otherwise that was a one-shot take, and I'm just kind of proud that I was even that close. And yeah, I'm back on camera for this one a little bit. The second song of the album is the title track, Evil and Other Pastimes, and it really sets up the theme and narrative of the album. It's got Morte on lead vocals with Deirdre on backing. It features Morte singing about the world he's found himself in, while Deirdre provides us with a different take on the setting as provided by her news report during the interlude, coming together to a similar conclusion during the choruses where they both sing together. In terms of what it's about, it's a dystopian hellscape. It's a little bit over the top, but that's by design and less unbelievable by the day. We're going to go through the song lyrics one chunk at a time, pausing in between each excerpt to talk about the lyrics. And remember, a lot of this was meant to be almost juvenile satire, but it might not sound it these days. Okay, so if everything configured correctly, here we go.
Welcome to the world they see of social vapidity, of spiritual vomit, psychological atrophy. Won't you join us for a cup of tea?
So here we have the lyrics on the screen. You can see them over there. Welcome to the world we see of social vapidity, of spiritual vomit, psychological atrophy. Won't you join us for a cup of tea? So basically it's saying, hey, the world kind of sucks. Let's just take a cup of tea, chill out, and analyze it a bit. And then it goes on and says, you see, we've reached a new level. You could call us privileged elite, hence the tea. Society's floating on the waters we bleed. That could be metaphor for, like, billionaires working very hard. It kind of makes sense in modern day philosophy and trickle-down economics. So wear a new tongue and taste bitter or sweet, because we're about to find out just how fun the human race can be. So the fun is obviously sarcastic. It's not a very fun, but it is a very sardonic. Some people are having fun, maybe others are not. And over the course of the album, you will see situations where other people are not having as much fun as the privileged elite mentioned in the first verse have. Let's continue.
I never thought that things could be this way.
But I had forgotten how evil entertains.
This is how we watch the world pass away. Let's all celebrate in despair. Pale basins and surrender your will, and you will know eternal bliss.
Okay, so we have a bridge that says, I never thought things could be this way, but I had forgotten how evil entertains. It's basically the idea of, like, the evil and the darkness seducing the soul. The chorus one is, this is how we watch the world pass away. Let's all celebrate in despair. Okay. So basically, the world is dying. We have no way to change that. Important point here. I would challenge this song on that notion, but if you pay obeisance and surrender your will, obeisance is like obedience. It's basically like, dear powers that be, I will do what you want, just don't come after me. Then you will know eternal bliss. The message of the song is that if you surrender your will, you will know eternal bliss. You will be spared some of the punishments of the world at large, but not necessarily all of them, as things fall apart and continue to fall apart, because the world is pretty bad. All right, we're going to do the next verse and then the one after that, kind of one at a time, because there's a lot there. Some of it's a little edgy, some of it's a little like shock value, but there's a purpose behind it, and I want to get into that.
I suppose we are human, as decay needs a hand or two. What can we contribute? What can we do? We could hate our leaders, kill the unbelievers, and gorge upon the spoils of war.
Okay, so humanists are people that want humanity to do better. And these humanists in this song are saying that decay needs a hand or two. How can we make decay worse? Well, we can hate our leaders. We hate our leaders because they oppress us. But then we kill the unbelievers who are not part of the us, partially at the request of our leaders, and we gorge upon the spoils of war. It's the idea that, like, we have this united earth, right? And if the united earth was truly united and helping each other out, things would be a lot better than they are when we fight each other over the unbelief and all of that stuff. Let's continue.
Let's make little dollies out of unborn children and sell them to the protesters at discount price. Cause they know we all need a good reason to bleed and to dance in the ruins of life.
So, first of all, again, shock value, right? They're talking about abortion, and anti-abortion forced birth protesters will consistently use the life of the unborn as their cudgel to take away people's rights. That's kind of what happened with the Dobbs decision. In case you didn't know, this is a political show. The idea here is just gross, right? It's like, let's take unborn children who are aborted, presumably, and sell them to the protesters at discount price, because we all need a good reason to bleed and to dance in the ruins of life. In other words, it's just like, hey, this is something horrible and evil that we can be a part of. Let's just have fun with it, because it's a game, which is definitely not, but that's the perspective of the character singing this song, because he's a dark-minded person, and also because it's very cynical. It's very, hey, for all the good that the anti-abortion protesters really do, you might as well do this, because not having abortion harms people far more. If that makes any sense. I know that's like a niche topic, so to speak, right? You know, it only affects half the population in this country, in this world, but, you know, it's a thing that is brought up for shock value that actually has an underlying point to it. Hey, did you notice me moving the camera around a bit? I hope you did. So anyway, we're going to continue with the second bridge, and you will notice the second chorus is different than the first chorus a little bit, and it kind of, we'll get into it.
I never thought that things could be this way.
But I had forgotten how evil entertains. This is how we herald the coming end. We are the chosen of the future times. Lower your voices and deny our fellow doubt, and you will know eternal bliss.
Okay, so the bridge is the same, right? I never thought things could be this way. I had forgotten how evil entertains. Cool, got it. Chorus 2, though. This is how we herald the coming end. We are the chosen of the future times. Well, think back to like anyone like Cassandra, right? Who can see the future, can predict the future, but can't necessarily control the future. All Cassandra can do is herald the coming end of Troy. So, in this sense, we are the chosen of the future times. We're going to see the aftermath of the apocalypse, but the end is coming. The next part of the chorus is one of my favorites. Lower your voices and deny your fellow damned, and you will know eternal bliss. So the promise here is, if you are damned, but you say, other person, you are also damned, we are both damned, you'll know bliss from suppressing somebody else. As opposed to, if you acknowledge your fellow damned and say, you know what, you weren't really that bad, well, then you're going to get maybe actual bliss, but the fear of punishment for supporting a damned person is going to keep you in line and keep you with that eternal bliss that really isn't bliss. And if I'm not mistaken, in this verse, Morte layers over pain with bliss. I'm going to play it one more time, just so we can hear it. Okay, I'm wrong. But I feel like he does that in one of the verses, or one of the choruses, and I'm not sure which one. So we're going to move on to the next part of the song, which is the interlude, and we'll talk about that in a second. So the interlude is a news report by Dear Destroyer, or rather a series of news reports that kind of set the stage for the storyline of this album. Remember, this album does have a storyline. It's not the strongest storyline, but it is there, and especially within this song and the next one, it's very prevalent. So Deirdre is reading the news as she's reporting it, and we'll see how it goes.
It has been confirmed that the terrorist attack has left the city in a panic. In a related topic, policyholders and stockbrokers have reaped an impressive profit from the shattered lives of thousands.
So this is basically the idea, hey, terrorist attacks are bad. 9/11 was only 7 years beforehand, so everyone in the area kind of remembers what a terrorist attack is like. And, you know, terrorist attacks are bad, but policyholders and stockbrokers, well, they might make a bunch of money off of this stuff. If you didn't notice, companies like Halliburton absolutely did.
Revolutionary computer technology has done it again as the new developments in electronic ignorance are being disseminated and sold throughout the metropolitan empire.
Revolutionary computer technology has done it again. Well, we hear that phrase all the time when things are good and good things happen, but the new developments in electronic ignorance, well, that's like distraction stuff, right? That's kind of like this phone here, right? It's a phone, and it does things. But it also distracts us from our day-to-day life. Or it can doom scroll us. It can suck us into the doom stuff to the point that, like, we're depressed and such things. But these developments in electronic ignorance are being disseminated and sold throughout the metropolitan empire, which is basically like the area we kind of lived in, right? I mean, I'm from New York. These people are from the Boston area, Massachusetts, but not too far apart and very connected. You'd be surprised. I'm not saying they're like neck and neck with each other. I'm just saying they're connected. Otherwise, maybe I wouldn't have known this band existed. Let's continue.
Economic Economic rejuvenation continues as the latest generation of youth is reared into an early lifestyle of hard labor and misery. Commendations to our exalted officials for reviving the antiquated policy of slavery.
So, economic rejuvenation sounds good. But the latest generation of youth is reared into an early lifestyle of hard labor and misery. The word slavery is brought up. Now, that's a controversial word. That's the whole point. The antiquated policy of slavery being commendated to our exalted officials. It's kind of the way that this song is saying, again, pay obeisance, right? If you submit to the exalted officials, you'll be fine. You'll just be miserable, but you'll be like a low-grade, consistent miserable, not a high-grade, existential crisis miserable. If that's making sense. So yeah, the new generation is brought into a lifestyle of hard labor and misery. And by the way, the millennial experience of being told not to eat avocado toast and have Starbucks, and then you can afford a house, and now you see what housing prices are like, although with the economy these days, who knows? That's kind of a thing, right? Like, this sort of predicted the inability of the younger middle class to sustain itself. So yeah, there you go.
Arsenal tests upon defenseless settlements of human beings have seen great success, and concepts such as agriculture and civilians have been labeled inconsequential.
Well, there you go. I mean, that speaks for itself, right? Weapons tests, great success. Concepts such as agriculture and civilians, who cares? They just die. They just die. We get to the last one, by the way, and that's one of them that ties into the storyline of this album and this band for a little bit. So just keep that in mind. It's also, like, again, an inspiration for this whole channel, in a way.
Visionary urban planners are calling for aid in the Dystopia project. Please submit all volatile, toxic, and contaminated waste products to your local depository for collection. This is Dear Destroyer, keeping your head in the news.
Okay, so visionary urban planners are calling for aid in the Dystopia project. Submit all volatile, toxic, and contaminated waste products to your local depository for collection. Basically, like, hey, this is how absurd it is. We're collecting toxic things and putting them together and making the world worse. And the last line is, this is Dear Destroyer, keeping your head in the news. Have you ever been in a situation where you're just reading headlines, you're on your phone, you're scrolling, because the next headline is bad. If you're in the Trump administration in 2025, yeah, you might be familiar with the idea how, like, every hour something can go even worse, and you're just like, God damn it, it's worse. Well, that's what Dear Destroyer's job is. She keeps your head in the news. She keeps you depressed about all the different headlines so that you can never work up the will to fight back. You never do anything but deny your fellow damned, because all you do is you have headlines saying how your fellow damned are doing all these damned things. So if they're damned and you're damned, why bother fighting for someone else when you can just keep the world the way it is? So there's an awesome guitar interlude. I would recommend you check it out when this goes live. The song is available, like I said, at Bandcamp and on YouTube. It is on YouTube. It is on Morte's channel, but it's like the only song from this album that's on there. So if you want the whole album, you go to their Bandcamp. Anyway, it's available for free. It's just loud. Bandcamp doesn't have sound control. Anyway, that's off topic. Let's get into verse 3. Now, this comes after the interlude. It's after Morte's woken up. It's after we know what we're dealing with in this world.
I take it you don't comprehend the world you're claiming to defend. You can no longer pretend to make a stand. You'd be less fucked over if you just rolled over, took it all, and enjoyed the ride.
So, I mean, there's not much more to say that isn't said here already. But it's basically saying, look, the world is terrible. You can't pretend to make some kind of stand about it. And I mean, I said trigger warnings up front. This is allegorical to, like, essay and whatnot, and words that I'm not going to say on YouTube because I want this video to get seen by somebody. You'd be less fucked over if you just rolled over. What does that mean? Think about what that means. Think really hard about what that means, especially if you have a woman in your life that you love. Think about what that means. The line, took it all and enjoyed the ride. Connect with that for a second. The metaphor of what is happening in those lines connects in a throughput to the world we live in. And I know I've been making dystopian reports about it, but just think about like the deportations to Guantanamo and to El Salvador and to Panama. Those things are probably happening to people right now, and it's horrifying. And so to metaphorically just submit to it on grounds that maybe this won't happen to me if I don't resist, well, that's what it says. You can no longer pretend to make a stand. If we don't actually take a stand, if we just say, well, we're guilty and we're just going to keep doing it, then, of course, nothing changes. That's the point. And that's the point of the next part of this verse.
Our heads are in the guillotine, facing toward the TV screen. Look at all those famished and those silly underprivileged. From here we can see declining humanity. Who could have known how much fun this would be?
So basically, it's our heads are in the guillotine facing towards the TV screen. It's like you're looking at your phone or your TV screen. You can't see my screen because it's in front of me and I'm looking at it. And you're just staring at it with your head about to be chopped the F off. Yeah, it's a pretty bad situation to be in. But as long as you're facing towards the TV screen, you don't notice that you're in the guillotine. That's the whole point, right? If you distract yourself, keep your head in the news, as Dear Destroyer says, then you don't notice how much danger you're in, because hopefully it won't happen to me if I just go along with it. And then the last lines. Look at all this famished and those silly underprivileged. Well, again, we said at the start, we were part of a privileged elite. That we're outside of this enough to be able to see what's going on, but inside enough to be trapped by it. From here we can see declining humanity who could have known how much fun this would be. Again, the fun is sarcastic. It's not very fun. No one's having a great time. It is awful, and we're just dealing with the consequences of it all. And here's the final bridge and chorus. And you'll notice the bridge is different than the first two. You'll notice that the chorus is also different than the first two. So, here we go. I want to pause real quick because this line is important to me. Whoever thought it made a difference anyway, your efforts making a difference, they don't. Don't you know that we're simply here to play? Well, play can mean a lot of things. It can mean like playing with my little Vegeta here. Vegeta, who is my wedding ring holder when I'm in my office, is holding my wedding ring. I could be playing with Vegeta, right? Cool. Or I could be playing in the great game that is taking place upon humanity. I could be part of the Dystopia project where I'm making things worse for everyone else, but I'm having a hell of a good time, which is exactly what happens later in this album. And if this video is popular, I'll do the next song, because it really does. The second and third song on this album, this song and the next one, tie into each other very strongly. Anyway, the idea that don't you know that we're simply here to play is a very like, hey, we exist only to state of nature type shit. If you go back to like the Enlightenment and the state of nature and mankind without rules, it's like fundamentals here. We're just here to do whatever we want, and we can do that without any consequences because we're simply here to play. Nothing you do makes a difference. It's still going to be bad, but you can play in it if you want.
This is how we eviscerate your dreams. You won't use them anyway. Lower your voices and deny your fellow damned, and you will know eternal bliss.
So, here we go, right? This is how we eviscerate your dreams. You weren't using them anyway. Hey, if you've given up, if you thought, what difference does it make? We're simply here to play. Do you have dreams anymore? It's an honest question. Do your dreams just become more play, whatever play is? Or do you get into a place where, like, you just give up your dreams? You know, maybe you dreamed once of being, I don't know, a rock star. Because we're listening to music. Music is good. This is a band that hasn't existed since the 2010s. I love them, but they are no longer a band. And that's unfortunate, but also, like, if you have dreams and you fall apart with them, what do you have left? Well, the answer they give is lower your voices and deny your fellow damned. Once again, just submit. Pay your obeisance. Just submit. And you will know eternal bliss. And that's the song lyrics that the song leaves off on. We'll hear it together.
And you will know eternal bliss.
That last laugh at the end always gets me because it's like fitting. It's like, haha, like, yes. You will know eternal bliss. Right, you will. It won't be very blissful. It'll be that low-grade, simmering but never boiling over existential depression where everything just sucks. So what can we take away from this song? I think the answer is a lot, right? There's a lot there. It's very dark, and yeah, some of the darkness is puerile, like, hey, I'm just being dark to be dark, but part of it makes a point, right? It's the idea that if you give up on your dreams, give up on your fellow people, and just surrender, pay your obeisance, life becomes easier because you're no longer fighting for a future. You're just living in a moment. Your eyes are on the TV screen, even though your head is in the guillotine. Now, we typically reserve the guillotine meme for those who have extravagant wealth and hoard it and keep it from those who need it, which is a nice thought until you really think about what the history of the French Revolution was. The guillotine was not exclusively used for the wealthy and powerful who had committed atrocities against the civilians. The civilians took control of the means of the guillotine and eventually found out that the guillotine's very thirsty. It takes a lot of people's heads, maybe that don't deserve it. Maybe you're just sitting there reading a book and, I don't know, I have a book on hand. I don't know why. I've been looking for this book for a while. It's Christianity in the West. I read it in college. It's about Christianity in the West, right? What if reading this book, for whatever reason, got me in the guillotine? Because somebody said, hey, that book's about Christianity, and you shouldn't be reading about Christianity because Christianity is outlawed because it's the Dystopia project. Everything's got to be dark and evil and grim. And my head ends up in the guillotine. Well, that's the thing, right? If you're facing towards the TV screen, you never notice that you're in the guillotine. And when the guillotine blade falls on your head, nothing's changed. Because you haven't been changing anything, because you've denied your fellow damned. Anyway, have I talked myself into a circle? I think I have. So I want to thank you all so much for joining me at Dystopian Review, the place where we dream of nightmare worlds. I know this channel has changed significantly. I know we're covering real-time news now. I hope you'll consider checking that out. I hope you enjoyed this review. If you did, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel. Those are the biggest things you can do so that you're not just denying your fellow damned like I'm a damned person. Because the only way we win these kind of things is if we stick together. If everyone puts their phones up, if everyone denies their fellow damned, we lose. But if we work together and we keep a hold of our dreams, then we actually can change the world for the better. And that's the underlying message of the song, right? The evil, necromancer guy is singing about how doomed the world is, but his perspective is colored by his malicious intent. He's not a good person. The singer of this song, except maybe for Deirdre's part, isn't a good person. He wants things to fail. So if we work together, maybe we can make things succeed. Anyway, again, Dystopian Review, the place where we dream of nightmare worlds. Dystopian Report, the place where we talk about our nightmare world that we found ourselves in. I hope, Ariel the Cat, we have done you justice. I hope we have. Thank you all so much for joining me, and as always on this channel, pieces.